Working on my 944 suspension, I haven't really found a good instructional video or illustration showing exactly what happens when you adjust the rear geometry on a Porsche 944. I have found a video made by Van Svensson on YouTube explaining how the 944 suspension works, but I'm going to try and build on that video by using this Lego model that I built from my kids' Lego. If you first look at the Van Svensson video, I will link to that below. You'll find explanation on this being the main control arm, this being the spring blade, or some people call it a radius blade. And you'll find the explanation of some of these nuts and bolts here. These are for this is a pinch bolt, this is an eccentric adjusting the ride height, and then you have a couple of pinch bolts here, and you have the toe setting bolt on the 944. You'll find the similar setup on the 911 from G model and older, where you have these oblong slots where the control arm bolts into. I've made this model so you can see how you have this little green dot and this red dot below, illustrating these two bolts, so that you can see what happens. First, I'm going to illustrate how to adjust the toe setting on these rear suspensions, and I've made this by having this little rod or the control arm move in a longitudinal direction relative to each other. And you'll see when I look, seeing from above, now we have a neutral or a straight setting on the rear toe. But if I move this control arm slightly forward relative to the spring blade, you'll see that I get a little bit of toe here. You can see the angle change when I move this back and forward. Now I'm gonna rebuild my model slightly so that it's easier to show how the camber settings works. Now I have rebuilt my Lego model with a fixed length of the spring blade from the torsion bar to the attachment point on the control arm, so it's easier to illustrate how the camber adjustments works. To adjust the camber, you need to release the tension on the bolts attaching the control arm to the spring blade. It's this bolt, these two bolts, and this one forward. The same goes for the 911 suspension, releasing the bolts here on the spring blade. The camber is adjusted by rotating the control arm relative to the spring blade. I'll illustrate this when I move forward. So rotating the control arm backwards, you see that the top of the wheel is tilting inwards, meaning you are gaining a negative camber. So when the wheel is tilting, the top tilting in, you have negative camber. And you can see from this angle, from the side, that this green dot is further rearwards than the red dot at the bottom. That means to have negative camber, you need to release the bolts and then turn the control arm this direction relative to the spring blade. Okay, I'll put this so you have neutral camber. When the you are driving your car and into a turn, and the car leans over. The whole assembly of the rear suspension rotates approximately on an axis in this axis. That is because the control arm attachment point, the inner attachment point, is slightly rearwards of the torsion bar. So you get an axis approximately like this. It's of course exaggerated in this Lego model for illustrations. When the suspension now moves upwards, you see that you gain a little bit of negative camber. So the top of the wheel tilts inwards when the suspension and the wheel moves upwards relative to the body of the car when you're going through a turn. That's the outside wheel. Also to be noticed is that when you have negative camber, you see that the plane of the front section of the spring blade and the angle of the plane of the control arm is not the same plane. The spring blade actually has a twist to it. So as you adjust the camber, and also when the suspension is moving, this control arm actually bends like a propeller. Okay, to sum up, to adjust for tow, you move the control arm back and forth relative to the spring blade. And to have negative camber, you rotate the control arm backwards. And the upper bolt move backwards and the bottom bolt move forward to have negative camber. Okay, that's it. Thank you for watching.